So actually, the thing that strikes me the most with the Percom Ali is that the beautiful blends the historical reality of Britain's first female doctors in the Cornish and fields, and also you use the Cornish folklore as well to tell the story. So I would like to ask you how whole this story came about for you, and why did you want to depict this particular piece of story?
Yeah, well, I wanted to depict this story because, firstly, I've been a professional magician for most of my life,
Yeah.
and not only do I do magic, I love everything to do with magic, including ancient folk tales. And I was on holiday in St. Ives with my daughters, and I heard about the legends of mermaids. And what struck me about these original legends is that the depiction of mermaids is very different to like a Disney princess mermaid, in that they were really brutal killers. And so that appealed to me. And then I wrote a rough draft, and then I was talking to my ex, and she'd read it, and she mentioned, women, even if they were qualified back then, they weren't often allowed to practice medicine. And then I discovered the true story of the Edinburgh Seven, which is the first seven female doctors in Britain, that although they qualified, the public did not want them to be doctors. And from there, I managed to melt the two together. And I was really pleased because I managed to sort of hit a drama and hit a fantasy film at the same time.
And that's also your mother's New Age bookshop played a role in that, because I know there is, like you are very interested. You have been doing like comedy, also magic, acting, writing. So I found like everything about you. So I would like to
Yeah,
ask you, yeah, if that thing also influenced you a little bit, and also you mentioned a memorable meeting with a wigwam with occultists while researching for this. Is this true?
my mum did have a New Age bookshop.
Okay.
So uh, I used to have a joke in my act, which is, what's the difference between a New Age hippie and a ruthless businessman? One's my mum, the other's my dad. And so I was this sort of curious combination of being quite a commercial filmmaker, but then also intrigued by mystery and magic. So I used to read all of the books in my mum's New Age bookshop, basically about folk tales and different religions. So that's where quite a lot of my inspiration comes from. I did have a meeting in a wigwam in Bristol.
Oh,
So I was working on another script, and I met Peter Carroll, who invented something called chaos magic. And I met his friend, Professor Ronald Hutton, who is Britain's preeminent historian on the history of witchcraft. So I met these
wow.
two guys because of their knowledge, basically, of the history of Britain. And of course, the real history of religion in Britain is very different than what we get taught at school, because,
Mhm.
well, Britain, along with so many other countries, were really people practiced paganism, and they've kind of sort of pushed that away. And I think it's fascinating that we have these old religions that we don't really know that much about, really.
Actually, I know, but first I want to talk a little bit more about the percom. So I think another theme that is important there, since you talk about paganism as well, is these themes of science versus superstition in a way, because we found them, especially in the past, were so intertwined in a sense. We can talk, about
Yes.
also sailors going to, touch the metal thing before going on a ship. And
Yeah.
I would like, what were the most parallels that you find interesting, knowing that the film is set in 1893. So what do you think it's still on a conversation in contemporary society?
Well, I actually think we may have regressed back more into superstition with the advent of social media. I mean, how many
It's true.
Instagram clips have you seen where people say, "Oh, I wouldn't date him. He's a Sagittarius." I mean, the world is very. I think it's one of those things that fascinates me. The truth of it is, there was a lot of loss in my family growing up. So I lost some family members when I was quite young, and from there I always wanted to know, is there something more, to life or not? And we seem to have almost two camps of the people who believe and the people who do not. And there doesn't seem to be much of a crossover in the middle. In fact, there was a famous magician entertainer. His phrase was, "For those who believe, no explanation is necessary. For those who don't, no explanation will suffice." And I think that pretty much summarizes Western thought on belief in the mysterious. That people either do fully believe in superstition or not at all, and they're atheists. And I think that really we should be open to both and exploring both. There's no doubt about it. In the past, people use superstition against people to put the fear of God into them. And then you could say, at the start of the 19th century, when we had the power of science suddenly showing us that, well, actually crops don't grow, nothing to do with some rain god, but because of the problems in the soil. And that's when the world started to change. But I think that most people are still a curious combination of the two. And I think the reason is there's not enough education either in science or in religion, to be honest. And I think we're all sort of dawdling, trying to figure it out.
So I totally agree. In fact, I found it very interesting, how you portray the story because there is a lot of research behind it. Also, I would like to ask you, how did you choose the location? Because even the fact that you choose that particular location, I think it adds a major significance to the story. And aside from that, I would like also to ask you if you have like any particular interests right now that you want to share. I mean, like in terms of people that can be curious about, I think that what you said, that people don't get involved too much, both in science or, in the mysterious or magic or uh,
Yeah.
occultism as well. So I would like to,
I,
if you have like a kind of, advice for people that want to be more seekers instead of,
oh gosh.
yeah.
Well, I'm a filmmaker, not a guru. But I will. I think that, well, firstly, the first question, why did we choose Penzance as a location? Well, the original mermaid myths were set in Penzance in Cornwall. In fact, there are hundreds of folk tales based in Cornwall. So that's why I wanted to film in Cornwall. Not only that, it's a beautiful location. I mean, it's a staggeringly good location. And the third reason is that the beach where we were at was actually privately owned. And so we could actually get the access without, we wouldn't be filming a scene with a mermaid and a tourist walks by in the background. So there was a practical consideration. Turning to the next question, which is pretty big, um, I'm I think that I'm one of those people who is sort of seeking answers. I'm trying to understand the world, but I don't think you can. I think people come to that if they want to, and I think a lot of people are very happy where they're at, in their worldview, and I don't think one makes one person more superior than the other. If you enjoy shopping and having a good time with your family, that doesn't make you better than Nietzsche to me. I just think we're all very different and we all have these different questions that we're trying to solve in our own lives.
Yeah, it's true. And also, I found that this year in particular has been, very prolific in terms of a return to what was not only the folklore stories, but if you see, we had the film of Frankenstein again, the film of
Yeah,
Dracula again, and both of them actually resonates with the theme that I found in Percom, that is, the power to actually give back earth to the people that we love and actually defend them, like protect them in some way from death or art. So
yeah, I mean, for me, um, one of my fascinations with folk tales is if they've lasted this long, they have to be resonating with people, and trying to understand what makes them such a good story. I actually do the same with magic tricks as well. Weirdly, in the world of magic, there are certain tricks that are thousands of years old that are just as entertaining today as they were in the Middle Ages. And there are certain reasons why. And I think it's very true. And I think they pull on something inside of us. Sometimes the themes seem quite simple, like defending our loved ones. I often wondered whether the story of the mermaid was a cautionary tale for sailors, because it's always a sailor being lured away by a beautiful mermaid who then destroys him. So I wondered whether that was, hey, when you're traveling around the world, don't stray from your wife because you'll get into trouble. I don't know whether that was the original uh, meaning behind the story. I'm not too sure. But it's fascinating that I think sometimes they even pull on something even bigger as well, that taps into our unconscious. For some reason, the image of a mermaid is inherently mesmerizing to look at. We have the opening shot of the mermaid where we see her singing out to the ocean. And every time it hits the big screen, you can kind of feel it in the room. And there's just something about certain images that seem to just captivate us. I think it's a bit like when you look at snow falling, we just kind of stop thinking and we're just mesmerized. And I don't know why that works, but it just seems to work.
yeah, it's true. And also I recollect while you were speaking right now, I recollect the scene when you show only the eyes of the mermaid with the
Yeah.
sea inside. That thing was magnificent. So how did you choose to put that?
You
That
know, yeah, it's so the scene where it's a close up of her eyes and we see the ocean within her eyes. That was just an idea I had in a daydream. Um, I'm a big fan of David Lynch, and he said that he liked to use abstractions in his films where you create an image that's so arresting that it kind of affects us in the back of our heads somehow. And we're not quite sure how, but for some reason it means something to us. And then and it's being able to come up with something that affects you in that way. And I think that shot manages to do that. But ask me how I came up with it. I don't really know. I was just just if I think if you lock yourself in a room long enough, you'll just come up with cool ideas. That's it.
And I would also ask you, like, I think you are also working on your next project, is it right? So
Yes.
I found out that you are working to a film called The Grimoire with Eric Garcia.
Yes.
Is it true? So can you share a little bit about it, or is still top secret? I don't know.
Well, it's a bit top secret, but I actually wrote this before the Pearl Comb,
Oh, cool.
and but I made the Pearl Comb to really stretch myself as a director, because there was so many complicated shots. Uh, but essentially, it's also got a folk tale attached to it as the grimoire. But essentially, it is set now with flashbacks to the 1600s. But it is essentially about a fireman who loses his fiancée in an accident, and
Oh,
he allows his own personal demons to take over, which makes way for a real one to enter his life. And this taps into quite a lot of themes about people's inability to handle grief, where they end up in a life of distraction, really than facing the grief head on. That's another area that I find quite interesting, and I think we sort of live in that world now. I mean, I'm terrible myself for going on Instagram, and just getting distracted rather than thinking. And I think we live in that world, and this film is kind of that's basically the theme of it, is that we're all living in distraction, drinking or gambling or being on social media rather than actually dealing with our problems.
it's totally true, and I found very interesting. I mean, I was attending the BFI this year. That was like some weeks ago, and I thought, since I have already seen, like um, your short film, like I was thinking, so that it should be there some way, because I think this year in particular was all about, grief, and the central theme of the festival was all about grief and trying to rebuild some kind of sense of community that is totally
Mm,
lost in a way, and also the fact that we have to give back some kind of true meaning, some kind of true purpose in life that is not so superficial. Looking at the fact that, the war is kind of mess in related to wars, and what people understand about what's going on. You know what I mean?
mhm.
So um, I found it very. Uh, I mean, like you said that you love David Lynch. David Lynch used to thought that there is like some kind of universal questions that is guiding, especially for people who are, creative. So they find,
Yeah,
the same. It's like having like a big thing where
yeah, yeah. Well,
you
I
pick
mean,
up ideas. Yeah.
he's talking about Carl Jung's idea of the collective unconscious, and that when we have a good idea, we're tapping into this source.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think that's kind of a great way of looking at things. I certainly do think when you have a cool idea, it's like everyone knows it's a cool idea. That's that's what I find interesting. And when you have a bad idea, we all know it's not a good idea, which means as though we all seem to know it. We do it with songs, and we do it with comedy. We seem to do it. It seems it's just an odd thing, but yeah, I think that we all inherently know when something's cool or it's interesting, and I think we do tap into something. As for the BFI, I would love to be at the BFI, but I don't really know anyone. I'm relatively new in this world, so I don't know anyone. I don't even. I mean, I think we entered the Pearl Comb for the BFI, but I don't know whether it really got watched or anything. So who knows?
But I found it really, really resonating this year. So it was a pity not seeing that. And what do you expect? I mean, in terms of, did you get some feedbacks from some kind of audiences where you have shared the percom with, and you know, it's
Yeah,
something that
I
you
mean,
wanted, or
generally we've had incredible feedback with the Pearl Comb. I think it's it's a film that is quite epic, and a lot of short films are often a drama, and I think and one of the reasons why is because of with budgets as well, and not many people go down the route that I've gone down of getting into fantasy. I mean, there are fantasy films out there, but I found that they're immediately a niche, really. I've become good friends with some other guys I've met in America who also make fantasy films, but it seems as though there's a couple of hundred of us, and most people are doing, different uh, genres, as it were. But the reaction for the Pilcombe's been brilliant, I have to say, and and that is both at drama festivals and at horror festivals.
Oh,
So I'm very lucky that we've managed it. So the one that really touched me was we entered the Women Over 50 Film Festival and we won their top award for best drama, and that made me so happy that that their audience, loved the Pearl Comb as much as when we played in Fantasia for all the horror fans.
this is so cool, fantastic. And do you believe that you can do like a long form, or you will leave it in that shape, or did you ever talk about it,
Yeah,
think about it?
at the moment, I feel like it, the Pilcombe is good as it is.
Okay.
It's plausible. I could make it into a longer film. Um, Someone mentioned to me the idea of making a series about all the legends in Cornwall. I think that would be a
That would
cool
be
idea.
fantastic.
To
Yeah,
have a series where you do all the different legends, like half-hour episodes. I think that would be a
very
better
interesting.
way to go.
Yeah.
So I would love to do that. But when I write an idea, uh, you don't. I always think each idea it's its own thing, and sometimes they lend themselves to being a film, and sometimes they lend themselves to being, I don't know, a picture or just a short film, say.
And can I ask you if you can share, you have talked about David Lynch, but do you have any particular director or movies that, have resonated with you, or that are have a particular meaning, like that you go and
Yeah.
watch them when you feel.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm not I've not been to film school. I'm not like a movie buff. I can't list Truffaut's last 10 films or anything like that. you know, I would say I'm just someone who just loves movies, and I love the cheesiest movies, and I also love art house movies. And I found that this is the same in the comedy world. I love watching the real comedians, and I also love watching the very commercial comedians. And I don't like snobbery at all in art. I just think everyone does their own thing, and that's what they're into. Um, but in terms of a film that surprised me, that really affected me when I was younger, and this is quite a highbrow film, it was The Last Temptation of Christ by Martin Scorsese, which I believe was banned because it portrayed Jesus being married to Mary Magdalene,
Yeah, it's true.
and it actually blew me away. And I can't believe they banned this film because it made me so affected by Christianity as I watched this film. And what actually blew my mind watching that film was, imagine waking up one day and you hear a voice in your head telling you you are the Son of God. And what happens in the film is this guy, he goes crazy. He's just a normal guy who's hearing this voice and he thinks he's going mad. But it turns out he actually is the Son of God. And I just thought that was a brilliant premise. If you woke up one day and that actually happened,
Yeah.
everyone would just think you're schizophrenic. They would not think you're blessed. And I actually watched that and I felt sorry for Jesus. It was a very weird feeling I had. And I watched this late night on telly years ago,
Yeah.
but for some reason it really, really affected me.
This is so good. And actually, why they put, very good film also like so late in the night. Like in Italy, it's the same. Like I remember
Oh, do
when,
they?
yeah, yeah. When I was a child, like the best moment to watch television was about 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning, like where you can find
Yeah,
those old
I
movies.
think it's.
Yeah,
I think this was film 4 on Channel 4, maybe 10, 12 years ago. Yeah, and they used to put all the sort of really classic films on late at night. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like especially I was very fascinated by Asian movies, so they were really rare to see like on TV,
Yes.
on normal TV. So they can happen to be like on a screen like only late in the night, like somewhere around Christmas or around festivities, like when
Yeah.
program is a little bit different. So it was very, very interesting. And so I would like to ask you one last question. If you believe like there is a project or a thing that would be the best way to express what your creativity in the next, years, what would it be?
Well, that's a great question. Uh, I think sometimes you get a bit lucky. When I came across the Legends of the Mermaids, that was purely by chance. Um, but at the moment, I'm working on a new screenplay about an old Charles Dickens story that's
Oh,
not been told, and I think that could be my best idea I've had. But you have no idea until you do it. All you have to do is you have to just keep coming up with the ideas and see what lands. But at the moment, I think that could be the best one.
fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much, Ali Cook. It was really a pleasure talking with you about the fur comb and all the things that you are interested in and you loved.